This is Agriculture Today, and I'm Shelby Varner with the K-State Radio Network. Kansas Farm Service Agency Agricultural Program Specialist Allison Womack kicks off today's show with date reminders for FSA programs and a reminder about county committee elections. The show keeps going with K-State Northeast Area Agronomist Tina Sullivan discussing fall soil testing, what nutrients growers should consider applying, and what to hold off on for pasture ground. The Beef Cattle Institute's Brad White, Bob Larson, and Brian Lubbers wrap up today's show as they converse about pain management in livestock and the medicine available and lack thereof. That and more is coming up ahead on Agriculture Today. You're tuned in to Agriculture Today, and we start our Wednesday show talking with agricultural program specialist from the Kansas Farm Service Agency, Allison Womack. Allison, thanks for joining us today.
Hi, Shelby. Happy to be here.
Allison, as we will talk through a few different things today, wanting to first mention that the Farm Service Agency doesn't currently have a lot of things happening because there is no Farm Bill yet.
That's right. Currently, with no new Farm Bill legislation or continuance of the 2018 Farm Bill, FSA is restricted on program work activities other than basic farm maintenance. So, again, I harp on this every time I come here. If you have any record changes, entity structure changes like that, we can be working on those right now.
There are a couple of programs that are still kind of operating with the Farm Service Agency, however.
Correct. Marketing assistant loans are still available through the spring of 2025 based on 2024 crops. I believe the final availability date for those is going to be May 31st. We also have dairy margin coverage. That program is a calendar year program, so payments will continue to generate through February of 2025 if triggered.
And just reminding us, what is the Marketing Assistance Loan Program?
So marketing assistant loan programs, or MALs as we call them, are short-term loans that provide interim financing for producers. Typically, we see them around harvest time when markets are flooded and prices are low. It's just a way to give that producer some financial freedom. We have low interest rates as opposed to your local bank. So,
Allison, as we're thinking about dairies, also wanting to mention something called ODMAP, and can you first tell us what does that stand for?
Yes, ODMAP stands for Organic Dairy Marketing Assistant Program. Sign up is going right now through November 29th. There's no impact on this program due to the Farm Bill, and so if you are an organic dairy in the state of Kansas, make sure to reach out to your county office and get signed up for that.
And if there are dairy but haven't worked with the Farm Service Agency in the past, can still start working with the Farm Service Agency?
Yes, definitely.
A few other things that are kind of happening with the Farm Service Agency right now, some certification dates.
That's right. So if you have a NAP policy on your alfalfa or grass, you want to certify those acreages by November 15th of this year. Small grain certification, you need to turn those acreages in by December 15th, 2024. And then if you have honeybees, your colony inventory reports are also going to be January 2nd of 2025.
And when you mentioned certifying, what do you mean by that, Allison?
So you're going to want to let us know what acres you have planted, obviously to what commodity, what you're doing with that acreage. Are you going to graze it? Are you going to take it for grain? Cover crop acreages. It might benefit you to reach out to your local county office. I think some conservation districts across the state do cost share on those. And then in the past, RMA has given incentive, taking a little bit off your premiums for cover crop acreages. So if that's available, the first thing you're going to have to do is certify those acres.
And is there something that people who are with the Farm Service Agency could be expecting to see in the mail here soon?
That's right. County committee ballots will be mailed, I believe, November 4th of this year. So make sure you get those completed and returned to your county office by early December.
Is it anyone who's involved with the Farm Service Agency or has done work with it that will get to vote?
Correct. So if you are listed, if you have an interest and you participate with us, you should be receiving a ballot if you have an updated and correct mailing address. If you're looking for a ballot and you have not received one, reach out to your county office. They can provide you one and then ensure that we have the right records on file.
And Allison, even though the Farm Service Agency is kind of just holding right now, you guys have paid out a fair amount in programs.
That's right. So in 2024, DMC in Kansas issued 183 payments totaling $253,000. We had a total of 126 DMC contracts. Kansas has made 33,668 CRP payments that total $69 million as of October 11th. 2023, some counties across the state and some commodities triggered for ARC PLC payments. We issued, 195 million plus to roughly 93,000 producers across the state. In 2024, LFP, the Livestock Forage Program, had 49 counties eligible due to drought conditions. That program's based on the Drought Monitor, and we paid out $8.4 million to 2,300 producers. In 2024, the Livestock Indemnity Program, also known as LIP, we paid out $1.9 million. 2024 ELAP, the Emergency Livestock Assistance Program, payments to date were $191,000. NAP, the Non-Insured Disaster Assistance Program, we've roughly paid out $86,000 for 2024. However, we're only midway through the crop season on those, so losses are generally not processed till fall or winter.
Allison, for people who think they should be receiving payments, is that something that they'll just see pop up in their bank account?
So yes, if you're signed up for direct deposit, that should be showing up in your bank account with a statement that normally follows in the mail about 3 to 4 days afterwards. However, if you don't have direct deposit on file, you'll get a live check in the mail. Those take a little bit longer to process, so they come about 2 weeks after we've paid it in office. They show up in your mailbox. If you're expecting a payment and you have not received one, definitely reach out to your county office and figure out what's going on.
And Allison, always reminding people where they can find out more information about the Farm Service Agency.
Sure. Reach out to Farmers.gov. That has all of our information. And then if you're looking to work for the Farm Service Agency, check out our options on usajobs.gov.
Allison, I appreciate you taking the time to join us today.
Thank you so much.
That was Agricultural Program Specialist from the Kansas Farm Service Agency, Allison Womack. As always, you can find out more information about FSA programs by going to Farmers.gov. Before we cut to a break, we're now going to be joined by Ron Wilson with a Kansas Profile.
This is Kansas Profile. I'm Ron Wilson, director of the Huck Boyd National Institute for Rural Development at Kansas State University. Good fences make good neighbors, wrote the poet Robert Frost. Good solid fences are important to keep our animals in and our neighbors happy. A good fence begins with a good solid corner post from which to build it, but that is not always easy to put in place. Today we'll meet a young entrepreneur who has designed a new and better way to install the corners for those fences. It's today's Kansas Profile. Eric Spurgeon is co-founder and co-owner of Iron Hedge Company in Buhler. He grew up on a farm and ranch near the rural community of Mullinville, population 197 people. Now that's rural. When I was 8 years old, I knew I wanted to be an engineer, Spurgeon said. In order to raise money for college, he started a fence-building business while in high school. He built more than 80 miles of pasture fence in southwest Kansas and sold that business at graduation. Building fence is a hard job, especially setting the heavy wooden hedge posts, which are often used as corner posts. Not only are they heavy, they require a way to dig a hole big enough in which to set the post several feet into the ground. This can be a challenge in rocky Kansas soils. There's also the problem of maintenance over time, when fences can sag or get loose. Spurgeon thought about those challenges as he pursued higher education. Spurgeon earned a degree in mechanical engineering at K-State. He met John Kunze, who is an entrepreneur and teaches an entrepreneurship class in the College of Business. Kunze had also built fence at his family's farms. They talked about the challenges of building fence with traditional hedge wood corner posts. They figured that there had to be a better way. We set out to fix everything that we hated about putting up fence, Spurgeon said. We wanted to figure out how to make fencing easy to install, to source, and to transport, while building it in a way that would keep the fence tight, he said. A big part of the challenge was those heavy hedge posts used at the corners. Spurgeon and his partner set out to engineer a solution. They designed a prototype with easy-to-install metal corner posts, tension keepers and springs on the wires to adjust for temperature change and other factors to keep the fence tight. After refining the system, they launched the Iron Hedge Company. We wanted the whole thing to be lighter than a green hedge post, Spurgeon said. We're now on version 4, and it's 100 pounds lighter than our first one, he said. The corner of the fence is like the foundation of your house, and it has to be right, Spurgeon said. Ground contact parts on the Iron Hedge products are galvanized for longer endurance. Their first product install was in 2020. Now nearly 40 installations have taken place. The company owns 2 patents. The advantages of the Iron Hedge corner post system are said to include faster installation, longer-lasting results, and adaptability. Ease of installation and low maintenance of the product are our goals, Spurgeon said. We want quicker installation time and less headaches for the customer, he said. We show customers that this is an investment in infrastructure that will last a long time, Spurgeon said. Iron Hedge designs are intended to help assure a 50 to 75-year lifespan for the fence. That way a customer can spend less time on less value-added tasks and concentrate on the things that are productive and make a difference in their business, he said. For more information, see www.ironhedgefence.com. That's www.ironhedgefence.com. Good fences make good neighbors, and the Iron Hedge Company is working to make fences better with innovative improvements in the corner post system. We commend Eric Spurgeon, John Coonsey, and all those involved with the Iron Hedge Company for creative engineering and entrepreneurship in the fencing industry. I'm glad they got this corner on the market. And there's more. Eric Spurgeon is putting his engineering skills to work in other industries as well. We'll learn about that next week. For the Huck Boyd National Institute for Rural Development, this is Ron Wilson with Kansas Profile.
We're cutting to a short break now on Agriculture Today, but stick around because we have more for you up ahead. You're tuned in to Agriculture Today, and we continue our show talking about fall fertilization and soil testing with K-State Northeast area agronomist Tina Sullivan. Tina, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for inviting me.
Tina, wanting to talk about a few Agronomy E-Update articles that do cover fall soil testing and fall fertilization. So first, talking about fall soil testing, and why is this something that producers, growers might want to think about doing this time of year?
So we typically suggest to do that in the fall, especially for our pastures, our hayfields, as we're trying to look at what is our pH and what is our P and K values, as those are the ones that we're really seeing what's going on in the soil. When it comes to nitrogen, we really worry about putting that on in the spring. So let's take it back a little bit. We're in the fall right now. If we need to change our pH, if we're out of the range we need, then we apply it in the fall. So we have all the fall and winter to affect the soil for the coming spring. Same kind of applies for that P and K values.
How often is soil testing recommended to be done?
We say at least every 3 to 4 years. If someone's able to do it more often, every 2 years. Say it's a heavily grazed pasture, and there's a lot of animal movement from, they're all over the place and there's manure. Those can affect our soil values as well. And also if it's been abnormally dry or extremely wet, those kind of climatic factors can change some of our frequency. If we can at least do it every 3 to 4 years, that's great. If there's a bit more, we're trying to be more productive, say with a pasture or a hayfield, then we can, move it to every 2 years.
How does one go out and collect a soil sample that's the most representative? So
for the most accurate soil samples, we say to use a soil probe. You can borrow soil probes from a Log County Extension or NRCS offices. Shovels or spades can be used, but they can scrape into the soil and not be as representative as just a straight down probe. When we're taking samples, we want to have a representative composite soil sample for a field. So we try not to go more than 40 acres. And if it's a super variable field, it's no more than 10 acres per our composite sample. And within, say, whether it's those 40 acres or those 10 acres, we want to at least take 15 to 20 cores make up our full composite sample.
How would one distinguish that their field is really variable and might need to do more testing on it?
Sometimes if we look visually over a field, say it's super hilly, that there's kind of those gullies, kind of thinking about, the Flint Hills, right? There's hills and gullies, and there's going to be differences among those. You can also use applications like Soil Web Survey. It's a free online program where you can go see if there's differences in your soils. But you can go down to just like a visual looking across the field. Does it look uniform for your forage and your pasture, or does it look like there could be areas where it's like this area may need extra help?
Tina, now thinking more about the fertilization side of things, when producers get those results back, can they just look at them, or do they need to talk with someone about them?
For once we get, we send in our soil sample and then we get those results. So for pH, phosphorus, and potassium, we kind of have what's referred to as maintenance levels. They do drive how well our forage stand is going to produce, but it's not the driver like nitrogen would be. So for P and K, we have tables that if you're within a certain range with your low, your very low, your high, there's a recommendation on how much P or K you should apply. For lime, it's going to be more based on what is your current pH, the product that you can use, so the fineness of that lime, and how well you can actually buffer your soil. So whenever you get a result, there should be some kind of information that's going to help you determine where you can get to. When it comes to nitrogen, which we don't usually apply until the spring, it's going to be yield-based. So there's not as many nitrogen recommendations for pastures because we're not harvesting yield off. But if it's, say, a Brome or a tall fescue stand and we want 2 tons per acre harvested, there's a nitrogen recommendation for that amount.
Is there, even though nitrogen is preferred in the spring, is it okay if farmers just want to get all the fertilization done for their field in the fall?
We try to recommend not to apply all the nitrogen in the fall as the plants are typically going dormant. Nitrogen's what drives the plant to be green. Protein means green. And if the plants are going into dormancy, that nitrogen's not going to be used and then uptaken. And then we have a lot more chance for loss, whether it's volatilization or leaching through the soil profile.
When should everything be applied? Should it just be a split application of nitrogen?
So if we're going to say this isn't in an ideal world, right? So if we can apply in the fall, if we need lime, let's apply lime. Lime needs as much time as possible to interact with soil particles. That's how it changes to pH. For P and K, these nutrients aren't as mobile in our soil profile. So if we apply them in the fall, as long as the soil is not frozen, it can actually absorb into the soil profile and then be used in the spring when the plants reawaken or come out of their dormancy. So, and then say, again, in the best case scenario, we come back in the spring and we do our nitrogen application when those, the ground is no longer frozen. The big key is not applying any kind of fertility products when the ground is frozen and kind of when the plants are hopefully starting to wake up. So they're really looking for nutrients and can uptake them before we lose them to our various loss options.
And you can't apply too much nitrogen?
You can apply too much nitrogen, yes. That's kind of where we say now it's more of a yield-based goal for nitrogen applications, because if we apply too much nitrogen, not only are we kind of just wasting some of our money, we're allowing nitrogen to be leached out of the soil profile because it's a very mobile nutrient or lost to the atmosphere.
What are some recommendations when it comes to phosphorus?
So for phosphorus and potassium, we recommend them based off that soil test. We kind of talking back to a soil test, we said nothing really about nitrogen in a soil test, right? We can do nitrogen soil testing. It's a nitrate test, but it's a different test. And then for a lot of Kansas, we don't worry about nitrates in a soil profile for pastures and forage because we assume they're leached out. For phosphorus and potassium, they do not leach through the soil, and that's where a soil test is important to see what is in our soil because it attaches to the soil. So when it comes to recommendations, we look at what the value is from our test. Say we get our phosphorus test back, and we are at 7 parts per million. according to our test. That would put phosphorus in the very low category, according to the K-State soil recommendations. And then based off we're in the very low category, and say we're aiming for 2 tons of yield for forage, we would apply 45 pounds of P2O5 for that recommendation.
Where can people find these different soil recommendations from K-State?
K-State has very much recently updated all their soil test interpretations and the fertilizer recommendations for that state, where it's based off these yield goals compared to just whether it's dry land or irrigated. So you can find that at the K-State Extension website at the bookstore. And it's got all of our forages. It's got all of our cropping systems. It's MF2586.
Tina, I appreciate you taking the time to join us today.
Thank you for having me.
That was K-State Northeast Area Agronomist Tina Sullivan. If you'd like to read more on these topics, you can do so by checking out recent Agronomy update articles that have more information. I will link them in today's show notes on agtoday.net, as well as the resources that she mentioned in today's show. Before we cut to a break now on Agriculture Today, we're going to be joined by Scarlett Maydinger from the Kansas Livestock Association.
Justin McKee will be the featured speaker at the Cattlemen's Banquet opening night of this year's KLA convention, which will take place November 20th through the 22nd in Manhattan. The Kansas native spends most of his time as the main host and producer for Pro Rodeo Tonight and a variety of other shows on the Cowboy Channel. He was the voice of the professional bull riders from 2001 until 2010, hosting for several television networks, including NBC, CBS, Fox Sports, Versus, and RFD-TV. Apart from television, McKee has announced some of the biggest professional Rodeo Cowboys Association events, including Cheyenne Frontier Days, Pendleton Roundup, Calgary Stampede, and the Ellensburg Rodeo. When he is not hosting, producing, or announcing, McKee and his wife Jeannie stay busy on their commercial cattle operation near Hyco, Texas. To register online for this year's KLA convention and expo, go to KLA.org and click on Events and Meetings. Members also can access a printable registration form and hotel information on the website. The Hilton Garden Inn Convention Headquarters and the Fairfield Inn are sold out. However, rooms still can be reserved at the Holiday Inn Express, Bluemont Hotel, and Courtyard Manhattan Aggieville. Be sure to tell the hotel you're with KLA to receive the convention room rate. I'm Scarlett Maydinger.
We're cutting to a short break now on Agriculture Today, but when we come back, we'll be joined by K-State's Beef Cattle Institute's Brad White, Brian Lubbers, and Bob Larson. We're now cutting to that short break. This is Agriculture Today, and we conclude our Wednesday show with another segment from the Beef Cattle Institute's Cattle Chat podcast with Brad White, Bob Larson, and Brian Lubbers.
We were at a meeting recently and they were talking about pain management in cattle, and I got the response from several veterinarians even saying, yes, this is great and we'd like to do more for pain management, but there's very few things approved for pain management in cattle. So I want to start with you by asking, what is approved for pain management? And then the follow-up is going to be, why do we have so few things approved?
Yeah, so if we just start with approved, so we really only have one product that's approved with pain on the label. And that's the transdermal flunixin product, or people know the brand name would be Banamine. And it's approved for the pain associated with foot rot. Now we have several other drugs within the same class. So Banamine would be a non-steroidal. It'd be kind of the same family as like ibuprofen. And we do have other products within that class that are approved in cattle, just not for pain. And so they'd be approved for like reduction in fever and things like that. Now, as a veterinarian, I can use those products in an extra label manner if I see fit. And we could also use other products. If we felt like it was very severe pain, we can use things like narcotics if we want it. But again, that would be extra label. The use of things like local anesthetics like lidocaine or things like that would also be for pain specifically. That's an extra label use. But as a veterinarian, we would have that privilege to do it. So there really isn't much approved, and that's kind of a challenge. I think veterinarians would like to do more. The industry would like to do more. Consumers have asked for more. So I think it's one of those things, we'd like to do more, but we have one product right now that's labeled.
And that's, I think, one of the challenges. And as you mentioned, not just consumers, but also producers. And I've talked to several producers who've said, yes, we'd be happy to do this. And we're seeing more and more for that for specific programs. So Bob, I'm going to turn to you and say, why do you think we don't have very many approved?
Yeah, one of the main reasons is it's really hard to determine what is painful and how much something helps. Personally, and I could be wrong, I don't think aspirin or ibuprofen helps me very much. Some people just think that, aspirin really, really helps their pain level. For me, I don't detect that. But that's very subjective. I'm not even sure if I'm right about my pain. So it's really difficult to determine in an animal like cattle, who are pretty stoic. First of all, what level of pain are they feeling? And how much does my intervention change that, and for how long? Yeah. Is it just a few minutes, a few hours, or is it really an important difference? And that's something that we as researchers have struggled with.
Well, and you're right. Even in people, you look at how to measure pain, and there are grimace scales or pictures that you point to and say, here's how bad I am. And it's a 1 to 10 scale, and it's relatively subjective. And I have no way of knowing if my 3 is maybe your 5 or vice versa.
Who would know?
My wife categorically tells me that my 5 is not her 5.
Well, there's some gender differences, right? Yeah. I mean, so there's the amount of pain that, a hangnail will put me down for a day. Yeah, so I can see how that would be different.
But Bob's right. The reason we don't have a lot of products labeled for pain is, they have to go through the same approval process. So they have to have data that supports that intervention works for whatever that claim is. And in the case of pain, it's very difficult. We would all look at something and probably mostly agree, is it painful or not? Yes, no. We'd probably mostly agree there, but it's the level of pain, and then proving the level of relief of pain becomes very difficult with some of these subjective things. So
the ends of the spectrum, very painful or not painful at all, are relatively easy to determine. But if you want to look at product efficacy, you have to be able to show that improvement, meaning I can't have just a yes, no category. In many cases, we have some sort of scale that we measure on, but that scale is really subjective. People have tried physiologic measures, so chemical things that they're testing in the blood. People have looked at a variety of different tools to try to monitor animals and how they change. The behavior information has been really promising, but behavior is challenging to interpret, because is it better that I lie down more, or is it better that I stand up more? And that's where you run into the interpretation while we can measure it.
That's all we have for you today on Agriculture Today, but we'll be back with more for you tomorrow.